asked her, "What may I offer you now?" "I will take a little chicken," she replied. She certainly devoured half of it, tearing it to pieces with the rapid movements of her jaw like some carnivorous animal. Then she made up her mind to have some cherries, which she did not like, and then some plums, then some little cakes. Then she said, "I have had enough," and sat back in her corner. I was much amused, and tried to make her eat more, insisting, in fact, till she suddenly flew into a rage and flung a furious mica at me that I would not any longer run the risk of spoiling her digestion. I turned to my friend. "My poor Paul," I said, "I'm afraid we have had our trouble for nothing." The night came on, one of those hot summer nights which extend their warm shade over the burning and exhausted earth. Here and there, in the distance, by the sea, on capes and promontories, bright stars, which I was at times almost inclined to confound with lighthouses, began to shine on the dark horizon. The scent of the orange trees became more penetrating, and we breathed with delight, distending our lungs to inhale it more deeply. The balmy air, so soft, delicious, almost divine. Suddenly I noticed something like a shower of stars under the dense shade of the trees along the line, where it was quite dark. It might have been taken for drops of light, leaping, flying, playing and running among the leaves, or for small stars fallen from the sky in order to have an excursion on the earth. But they were only fireflies, dancing a strange fiery ballet in the perfumed air. One of them happened to come into our carriage and shed its intermittent light, which seemed to be extinguished one moment and to be burning the next. I covered the carriage lamp with its blue shade and watched the strange fly careening about its fiery flight. Suddenly it settled on the dark hair of our neighbor, who was half dozing after dinner. Paul seemed delighted, with his eyes fixed on the bright, sparkling spot, which seemed like a living jewel on the forehead of the sleeping woman. The Italian woke up about 11 o'clock, with the bright insect still in her hair. When I saw her move, I said, "We are just getting to Genoa, madam," and she murmured without answering me, as if possessed by some obstinate and embarrassing thought. What am I going to do, I wondered? And then suddenly she asked, "Would you like me to come with you?" I was so taken aback that I really did not understand her. "With us? How do you mean?" She repeated, looking more and more furious. "Would you like me to be your guide now, as soon as we get out of the train?" "I am quite willing, but where do you want to go?" She shrugged her shoulders with an air of supreme indifference. "Wherever you like. What does it matter to me?" She repeated her "che mi fa" twice. "But we are going to the hotel." "Very well, let us all go to the hotel," she said in a contemptuous voice. I turned to Paul and said, "She wishes to know whether we should like her to come with us." My friend's utter surprise restored my self-possession. He stammered, "With us? Where to? What for? How?" "I don't know. She made this strange proposal to me in a most irritated voice. I told her that we were going to the hotel, and she said, 'Very well, let us all go there.' I suppose she is without a penny. Certainly she has a very strange way of making acquaintances." Paul, who was very much excited, exclaimed, "I am quite agreeable. Tell her that we will all go wherever she likes." Then, after a moment's hesitation, he said uneasily, "We must know, however, with whom she wishes to go, with you or with me." I turned to the Italian, who did not even seem to be listening to us, and said, "We shall be very happy to have you with us, but my friend wishes to know whether you will take my arm or his." She opened her black eyes wide with vague surprise and said, "Che mi fa." I was obliged to explain myself. In Italy, I believe, when a man looks after a woman, fulfills her wishes, and satisfies her caprices, he is called a patito. "Which of us two would you take for your patito?" Without the slightest hesitation, she replied, "You." I turned to Paul. "You see, my friend, she chooses me. You have no chance." "All the better for you," he replied in a rage. Then, after thinking for a few moments, he went on, "Do you really care about taking this creature with you? She will spoil our journey. What are we to do with this woman who looks like I don't know what? They will not take us in any decent hotel." I, however, began to find the Italian much nicer than I had thought her at first, and I was now very desirous to take her with us. The idea delighted me. I replied, "My dear fellow, we have accepted, and it is too late to recede. You were the first to advise me to say yes." "It was very stupid," he growled, "but do as you please." The train whistled, slackened speed, and we ran into the station. I got out of the carriage and offered my new companion my hand. She jumped out lightly, and I gave her my arm, which she took with an air of seeming repugnance. As soon as we had claimed our luggage, we set off into the town, Paul walking in utter silence. "To what hotel shall we go?" I asked him. "It may be difficult to get into the city of Paris with a woman, especially with this Italian." Paul interrupted me. "Yes, with an Italian who looks more like a dancer than a duchess. However, that is no business of mine. Do just as you please." I was in a state of perplexity. I had written to the city of Paris to retain our rooms, and now I did not know what to do. 2 commissaires followed us with our luggage. I continued, "You might as well go on first and say that we are coming, and give the landlord to understand that I have a friend with me, and that we should like rooms quite by ourselves for us 3, so as not to be brought in contact with other travelers. He will understand, and we will decide according to his answer." But Paul growled, "Thank you. Such commissions, such parts do not suit me by any means. I did not come here to select your apartments or to minister to your pleasures." But I was urgent. "Look here, don't be angry. It is surely far better to go to a good hotel than a bad one, and it is not difficult to ask the landlord for 3 separate bedrooms and a dining room." I put the stress on 3, and that decided him. He went on first, and I saw him go into a large hotel, while I remained on the other side of the street with my fair Italian, who did not say a word, and followed the porters with the luggage. Paul came back at last, looking as dissatisfied as my companion. "That is settled," he said, "and they will take us in. But here are only 2 bedrooms. You must settle it as you can." I followed him, rather ashamed of going in with such a strange companion. There were 2 bedrooms separated by a small sitting room. I ordered a cold supper, and then I turned to the Italian with a perplexed look. "We have only been able to get 2 rooms, so you must choose which you like." She replied with her eternal "che mi fa." I thereupon took up her little black wooden trunk, such as servants use, and took it into the room on the right, which I had chosen for her. A bit of paper was fastened to the box, on which was written, "Mademoiselle Francesca Rondoli, Genoa." "Your name is Francesca?" I asked, and she nodded her head without replying. "We shall have supper directly," I continued. "Meanwhile, I dare say you would like to arrange your toilette a little." She answered with amica, a word which she employed just as frequently as "che mi fa," but I went on, "It is always pleasant after a journey." Then I suddenly remembered that she had not, perhaps, the necessary requisites, for she appeared to me in a very singular position, as if she had just escaped from some disagreeable adventure, and I brought her my dressing case. I put out all the little instruments for cleanliness and comfort which it contained: a nail brush, a new toothbrush, I always carry a selection of them with me, a nail scissors, a nail file, and sponges. I uncorked a bottle of eau de cologne, one of lavender water, and a little bottle of new mown hay, so that she might have a choice. Then I opened up my powder box and put out the powder puff, placed my fine towels over the water jug, and a piece of new soap near the basin. She watched my movements with a look of annoyance in her wide-open eyes, without appearing either astonished or pleased at my forethought. "Here is all you require," I then said. "I will tell you when supper is ready." When I returned to the sitting room, I found Paul had shut himself in the other room, so I sat down to wait. The waiter went to and fro, bringing plates and glasses. He laid the table slowly, then put a cold chicken on it, and told me all was ready. I knocked gently on Mademoiselle Rondoli's door. "Come in," she said, and when I did so, I was struck by a strong, heavy smell of perfumes, as if I were in a hairdresser's shop. The Italian was sitting on her trunk, in an attitude either of thoughtful discontent or absent-mindedness. The towel was still folded over the water jug that was full of water, and the soap, untouched and dry, was lying beside the empty basin. But one would have thought that the young woman had used half the contents of the bottles of perfume. The eau de cologne, however, had been spared, as only about a third of it had gone. But to make up for that, she had used a surprising amount of lavender water and new mown hay. A cloud of violet powder, a vague white mist, seemed still to be floating in the air, from the effects of her overpowdering her face and neck. It seemed to cover her eyelashes, eyebrows, and her hair on her temples was like snow, while her cheeks were plastered with it, and layers of it covered her nostrils and corners of her eyes, and her chin. When she got up, she exhaled such a strong odor of perfume that it almost made me feel faint. When we sat down to supper, I found that Paul